A major program has fired its head coach, and it's exactly the one you're thinking about. But they were not alone. The NFL also didn't want to miss out on the coach firing circus. The Jets currently sit atop the top 10 of the draft. How does the rest of the top 10 fall? We talk about all that and much more on today's episode of the Draft Countdown Show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Draft Countdown Show. I am your host, Brian Bosarge, and I'm here to tell you that we are 189 days away from the 2026 NFL Draft. And if you want to talk about the NFL Draft, the NFL, college football, or whatever, then you need to sign up for the Draft Countdown Discord. You can currently get there by clicking on that or scanning that QR code right there above me, or you can go to the link down below this video, or you can go to draftcountdown.com, top right corner of the search bar. There is a link to join the Discord. All right, a lot of news to get to this week, so we'll start right with the biggest news of them all. Penn State has fired head coach James Franklin 3 weeks ago. They were in a 2-overtime thriller with Oregon. Now back-to-back losses to UCLA and Northwestern, and Franklin's on the way out. He's going to be paid between $49 million and $56 million, depending on the reports you're looking at, to go away. Lots going to be made about how Franco could never win the big games, which is true. But he's still a great head coach, and he's probably going to land somewhere probably soon. I seriously doubt he's going to be out of work for more than a couple of months here. There's no offset language in his contract. So there's that. So where does Penn State go from here? Well, common sense says they're going to go try to get Indiana head coach Curt Cignetti, Pittsburgh native, currently resurrecting the Hoosiers program for the second consecutive year, just beat Oregon this past week. They're going to call him, make him say no. If he does indeed say no, then you have to assume that Nebraska head coach Matt Rule is on that list, Penn State alumni. Also, I think in play, Duke head coach Manny Diaz maybe gets a call, and always mentioned for these jobs is Iowa State head coach Matt Campbell. Seems to always have his name in the news. Other coach firings this week, UAB fired Trent Dilfer as its head coach. This was not a shock at all. He was an odd hire when they made it. He had only been a high school head coach up to this point, and one of the people who ran the high school Elite 11 camp. UAB entered the American Conference and immediately nosedived under Dilfer. I'm sure he'll land back at ESPN somewhere as one of their many analysts blowing nonsensical smoke up everybody's ass. UAB can win. They just need a head coach who's going to be able to guide them back. In the meantime, Alex Mortensen, son of the late ESPN insider Chris Mortensen, he takes over as the interim coach. So who's going to get the permanent gig for the Blazers? Do they bring back Bill Clark, who had great success with UAB? What about Ed Orgeron, the former LSU head coach? He ain't got nothing else better going on. There's a handful of FCS coaches in the southern area that might be interested as well. Fascinating one to follow. Like I said, I think UAB can win. Going to be a tough sledding to win at Oregon State. They fired their head coach, Trent Bray. He was promoted from Jonathan Smith's staff after he took the Michigan State job. And it's been just, they're one of the ones that, like, they just got screwed in the whole realignment deal. But they're 0-7 this year. They rejoined the resurrected Pac-12 next year. They're going to need to nail this hire to compete. This really feels like a spot for one of those FCS coaches to grab. Chris Vanini of The Athletic mentioned that Montana State head coach Brent Vigen, UC Davis head coach Tim Plow, and Montana coach Bobby Hawk are names to consider. He also mentioned former Wisconsin head coach Paul Christ as a possibility, as well as former Washington State head coach Nick Rolovich, who's currently on the Cal staff. Like I mentioned, the NFL didn't want to be outdone by letting all the colleges fire their coaches. So the Tennessee Titans pulled the plug on Brian Callahan this week as its head coach. Callahan was 4-19 in 1 1/4 seasons with the Titans. That includes a 1-5 start in 2025. I'm going to go out on a limb and say he will not be the only head coach fired before the conclusion of this season. All right, time for the draft order top 10. This will be a weekly segment going forward until the regular season concludes. We'll expand it out as the as more teams get eliminated from the playoffs. But for now, we'll stay at 10. We want to thank the good folk over at Tankathon, tankathon.com, the place to go to get the draft order for the NFL, as well as NBA, MLB, NHL, if those are your things. But we use it for the NFL around here, and tankathon.com is where we go. Sitting at the top, the New York Jets, 0-6. Well, they're alone at the top. But there are 5 teams currently at 1-5. So within one game of that top pick, if you will. Now remember, and this is especially the case right now, it gets less so as, the season goes on and we expand the win-loss records for a lot of these teams. But head-to-head has no factor in breaking a tie for a draft spot. The only thing that factors is strength of schedule. So if you suck against a worse schedule, you get the higher pick. So that's how we break this glut of 1-5 teams, of which, like I said, there are 5 of them. Right now, Cleveland sits at the number 2 pick at 1-5. They have a strength of schedule of 448. Baltimore, just injuries after injuries after injuries after injuries. The Ravens are not going to be in the top 3 at the end of this thing, but that's where they are right now. They're at 1-5. Miami also at 1-5 right now. I think they may be a contender for this thing as we go forward. I also think the Saints are going to be top 5 contention, as well as we just mentioned the Titans. They come in at the 6th pick right now, also at 1-5. And then the rest of the top 10 consists of 2-4 teams. And leading that line is the Cincinnati Bengals, currently at 2-4. A little more competitive this week with Joe Flacco at quarterback. We'll see how that goes the rest of the way. Big game tomorrow night against the Steelers on Thursday Night Football. But they have played a 459 win percentage. That's why they're here. Everybody else is well above a 500 win percentage as far as opponent's strength of schedule. And that gives us the Las Vegas Raiders at pick 8, the New York Giants at pick 9, and currently rounding out the top 10, the Arizona Cardinals at 2-4, pick 10th. All right, let's look back at the best and worst, if you will, of the prospects we watched in the Week 7 games. We watched 6 of them this week, all SEC and Big Ten games. So we'll get to the best offensive player we saw this week, and a guy who continues to stack performance after performance after good performance. after the Florida State game, where going back and watching it, he wasn't terribly bad. It wasn't his best showing, but he wasn't as bad as I initially thought in that game. But he's gotten better every week. And that's Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson. All of a sudden, a first-round pick contender, if you will, in what I believe is like his 7th start, I guess. But against Missouri this week, Simpson was 23 of 31 for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Had several drops in this game as well. Kind of brings that number down a little bit. But he had one of the best throws of any quarterback prospect I've seen all season. It was a 4th and 8 play, and he hit a freshman receiver on the sidelines, just absolute dart right behind a Missouri defender. Just a great throw. Best defensive player we saw this week was a guy who, we're going to talk a lot more about him in the coming weeks, but Ohio State linebacker Arvell Reese was an absolute ridiculous dominating machine against Illinois this week. Reese had 9 tackles, 8 solos, and 1.5 sacks, as well as that's not counting all the disruptive plays he made in this game. Reese, I don't think he's a pure off-ball linebacker at the next level, so I think you'll see him go higher than what a true off-ball linebacker would go. But I just top 5, top 10 right now. You have to consider Arvell Reese in that range. Other notable performances this week, Washington wide receiver Denzel Boston continues to shine. 5 catches for 98 yards and 2 scores in their game. Indiana wide receiver Elijah Surratt in their win over Oregon had 8 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown. In the Rutgers loss to Washington, I was impressed with their linebacker, Darrell Jabome. 6 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery against the Huskies on Friday night. Missouri has a pair of edge rushers that was awesome against Alabama this week. Georgia transfer Damon Wilson II, 3 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 hurries, and recovered a fumble. He recovered the fumble that Zion Young forced, the other edge rusher for the Tigers. 5 tackles, 1 sack, and a pass breakup along with that forced fumble. Just great duo there for Missouri. Ohio State corner Davison Igbenison has been up and down this season, but he looked really good this past week. 2 tackles, 4 pass breakups in the game against Illinois. And LSU in the game against South Carolina, Harold Perkins, just a chess piece defender. Like I said, we mentioned it's going to be defensive coordinator dependent on how he succeeds at the next level. But Perkins against the Gamecocks, 8 tackles and 1 sack. So that brings us now to the rant portion of the show this week, and we're going to talk about South Carolina quarterback LaNorris Sellers. In the game against LSU, 15 of 27, 124 yards, 1 interception, had 22 carries for 19 yards, and was sacked 5 times. I was so frustrated with the performance of South Carolina's offense Saturday night. The play calling, which we're going to get to, the offensive line play, which has been shit all season, and some of last year as well. I was basically advocating for Sellers to transfer at halftime. The dude was beat to death that entire game and for much of this season, if we're going to be honest. In my opinion, the way things are structured right now, South Carolina is actively ruining the best quarterback prospect in all likelihood in school history. It's just the way it is. Like I said, Mike Shula's play calling is just inept. It's just piss poor design of plays, the way he calls plays, the way he situationally calls plays. It's just shit week in, week out. We're going to get to that more in just a minute. This is the worst offensive line in the SEC, statistically speaking. You've got 4-star players up and down this offensive line, can't block yet. They got the worst run game in the SEC. They fired offensive line coach Lonnie Teasley this week. They had to do something. I mean, that's a start. I feel bad for Lonnie Teasley. I'm sure he's a great guy. But, dude, your unit sucked. and it's just been that way since he's been there. They shuffled the deck chairs a little bit. Sean Elliott, who was the old offensive line coach at South Carolina under Will Muschamp, he took over as interim coach when Muschamp was fired, and then left to be the Georgia State head coach. He got brought back. I think it was this year he got brought back as the tight ends coach for Beamer and run game coordinator. Now he's the offensive line coach and run game coordinator. He's a bit more of a hands-on, intense coach, to say the least. We'll see if that helps. I don't know. They're going to need it this week. They play Oklahoma, who is a great defense. Brent Venables, great defensive play caller. So, like I said, they're going to need it. But, man, it's just tough to watch LaNorris Sellers play after play, have to put on the cape, and just to turn a 10-yard loss into a 1-yard gain. It's completely ridiculous. Cole Kubelik, who was a sideline reporter for the SEC Network Saturday night calling the game, had this stat, which I just think is amazing to me. LaNorris Sellers finished the game, I mentioned, 19 yards rushing on 22 attempts. Per Teamworks, which I guess is a GPS tracking thing or whatever, his total distance traveled during the game, running around, scrambling, trying to do anything, he traveled during the game 894 yards, despite only having 19 yards rush. You realize how friggin' hard that is to do? It's just awful. And more offensive line ineptitude. LSU last week, amongst all defenses in the FBS last week, pressure rate without blitzing. So they're just sending the standard guys, 4 guys after South Carolina. Without blitzing, they got pressure on South Carolina 72% of the time. 72% of the time without blitzing. Horrible. Those stats. Liberty, by the way, was second this week with 51.9%. So they was a clean 20% better than the number 2 team without blitzing. That's per True Media and PFF with those stats. You want some more numbers? Let's give you some more numbers to tell you how shitty Mike Shula is as offensive coordinator. And we should have knew this, folks. We should have. His literally only reason he's promoted is because he was the offensive coordinator for Cam Newton in Carolina. So all of a sudden, that's why you make him the offensive coordinator for LaNorris Sellers, I guess. I don't know. He was an analyst last year on South Carolina staff. He single-handedly killed the Alabama program in the mid-2000s as the head coach. So, yeah, let's make that guy, put that guy in charge of a, once-in-a-lifetime prospect at quarterback for your school. But these are the 7 games where Mike Shula has been the offensive coordinator for South Carolina. Started with the bowl game last year against Illinois. South Carolina's offense, 390 total yards, 17 points. Loss. Against Virginia Tech to open the season, they had 328 total yards. The offense scored 17 points. They allowed 4 sacks. Virginia Tech notably dominated in the FBS this year, right? Against South Carolina State, an FCS school, South Carolina managed to put up a whopping 253 total yards, only scored 14 offensive points, needed like 2 punt returns from Bakari Swain to put this game away, and 2 sacks against the mighty Bulldogs of South Carolina State, a MEAC school. Against Vandy, 328 total yards. The offense managed 7 points, got the shit kicked out of them in the game, gave up 2 sacks. Now, Sellers got concussed in this game too, by the way, in the first half. So, yeah, good job, guys. That's a loss, by the way. Against Mizzou, 293 total yards, scored 20 points, had -9 rushing yards in the game, gave up 5 sacks. Loss. Against Kentucky, the worst team in the SEC. They only amassed a whopping 341 total yards, 21 offensive points, had a defensive score in that game, and gave up 2 sacks against Kentucky, who sucks. No offense to Big Blue Nation. And against LSU this past week, we talked about how he ran around for his life, ran 894 yards total during the game, just trying to escape. LSU, they get 317 total yards of offense, 10 points. Defense scored in that one too, and 5 sacks in the loss to LSU. Now you're sitting at 3-3, same place they were last year, and now they have games left against Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M, and you finish up with Clemson with a game against Coastal Carolina sandwiched in there. I mean, your offense better get better in a hurry if you want to go play in the Gasparilla Bowl, because at this point, I don't know that they're going to a bowl game if the offense doesn't get it in gear. And then at that point, you have to start questioning Shane Beamer as a head coach. You have to start questioning how many of these guys are going to leave to go to the NFL or transfer out. I mean, you got a lot of good players on this team that are getting wasted. Nick Harbor, the wide receiver, Dylan Stewart on defense. I mean, these guys are top NFL talent, skill level players. And LaNorris Sellers, potential top 5 pick in the draft at quarterback, just getting shit on with poor play calling, poor blocking up front, poor offensive line play. It's got to get better. Got to get better. It makes me sad. But anyway, that's the rant for this week. All right, let's refocus. Let's look at week 8. We got, I believe, 6 games again this week. We're going to focus on 2 on Friday night. And that's the first one, 6 o'clock on ESPN, Louisville at Miami. And are we in for another one of them weird ACC Friday night upsets? I don't know. We'll see. But man, Louisville's a really good offensive team. You got the 2 Brohms, Jeff Brohm, the head coach, Brian Brohm, offensive coordinator, and Miller Moss, a transfer from Southern Cal, been very good this year. Got a pair of good wide receivers, including Chris Bell, who I think is a top 100 player. Colin Lacey, a good gadget player, transferred over from South Alabama, can return kicks, one of the best in the country at that. Been playing some running back for them because they've had some injuries there. But they're going to be challenged by Miami's pass rush and its reign of terror that they've been inflicting on their opponents this year. We'll see. Virginia knocked off Florida State a couple weeks ago on Friday night. We'll see if Louisville's got it in them. But it's going to be a fun game. Also on Friday night, 7 p.m. on Fox, Nebraska is at Minnesota. Our first official look at both of these mid-pack Big Ten teams. Handful of day 3 prospects in this game worth keeping an eye on for Nebraska. I think wide receiver Dane Key, transfer from Kentucky, the focus of my attention. Meanwhile, for the Gophers, keep an eye on running back Darius Taylor, who's a solid prospect at running back. Moving on to Saturday now, 11 a.m. on ESPN, Georgia Tech at Duke. Yellow Jackets undefeated. Another game where we're getting our first look at some players. And I know there's some in the draft community who like Georgia Tech quarterback Haynes King as a next-level prospect. I'm not there at all, but I think he's a really good college football player. Tech's got some other players who may be draftable. That includes running back Jamal Haynes, wide receiver Eric Rivers came over from FIU, and defensive lineman Jordan Vandenberg came over Penn State. He's got 5 tackles for loss on the year. For Duke, started slow, but Darian Mensah, the transfer quarterback over from Tulane, has been great. 70% completion percentage, 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Can Georgia Tech block their edge rusher Vincent Anthony? We'll see. But the winner of this game, inside track on the ACC championship game. 2:30 p.m. ABC, Ole Miss at Georgia. Both teams coming off struggle wins. Georgia's was a little more controversial. SEC officiating, always a winner there. While the Rebels just a bit head-scratchy in their game against Washington State. Now they collide between the hedges this week in a game with college football playoff implications. We talked about it a little bit last week, but Georgia's been weak sauce in the trenches this year on both sides for the first time in recent memory. Can they score enough points to beat Ole Miss? We'll see. That's kind of going to be the key there this week. 3 p.m. on Fox, Texas Tech at Arizona State. If Arizona State quarterback Sam Leavitt doesn't play this week, this game's going to get out of hand. But Texas Tech has been dominant this season in the Big 12. The top 5 team right now for me in college football, and that's led by David Bailey. Edge rusher leads the FBS in sacks with 8.5, including 3 last week against Kansas. Their other edge, Romello Height, has 4.5. Height doesn't have the size to be an NFL edge, but he's got the pass rush skill necessary. Could be a good sub package guy. Day 3 pick that has that puts up some numbers. Baron Morton, the quarterback for Texas Tech, been banged up multiple times in the last month, but they haven't really missed a beat with their freshman quarterback that's come in and played. Arizona State wide receiver Jordan Tyson may end up. I think he probably is going to be wide receiver 1 in this class, maybe 2, depending on your opinion of Carnell Tate. The Sun Devil offense runs through him. Last week without Leavitt, he caught 8 balls but only had 40 yards receiving. It was his worst yardage output of the year, and also the only game that he didn't score a touchdown pass. But like I said, if Sam Leavitt plays, could be a fun one to watch. And finally, 6:30 p.m. on NBC, Southern Cal's at Notre Dame. This game definitely has college ball implications for the Irish, as this may be their only quality win by season's end if they can get it. Slowing down the Trojans quarterback, Jaden Maiava, and their wide receivers, Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane, should be their top priority. Quarterback Christian Gray for Notre Dame, draftable prospect, probably early day 3. He's got 6 pass breakups and a pick on the year. All right, time for the weekly Q&A segment. And just a reminder, this is a Discord exclusive segment. If you join our Discord, you can scan that QR code up there at the top, click the link down below the video, or go to draftcountdown.com, top right corner of the search bar, and you can get that Q&A, get your question ask your question, I should say, and get it answered on this show each and every week. All right. Bubba asks, back in the old days, some quarterbacks were viewed as college guys only. When did it change from that? If you put up good stats in college, you're likely getting drafted. Diego Pavia, the quarterback from Vanderbilt, seems like the biggest example of this in years. Does he get a shot in the NFL? All right. So let me quickly answer the first part of this. I don't necessarily think that just because you put up massive stats in college, doesn't necessarily correlate to draftability. Just get that out of the way. I do agree that the NFL softened on normal standards from the 90s, early 2000s that would automatically eliminated any chance for some of these players to get drafted. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, none of those guys had a shot at getting picked in 1997. Charlie Ward at Florida State, Joe Hamilton at Georgia Tech. If you remember, for the older crowd there, they almost certainly could have been successful NFL passers if given a chance, but they were never given that chance because they were undersized athletes at the position or whatever. I think both of those guys, the way they played the game in the early 90s to late 90s, you put those guys in the NFL now with those games, they succeed. But neither was drafted in the NFL. Charlie Ward was drafted in the first round of the NBA. Joe Hamilton was not drafted at all, I don't believe. Never given a chance. But to wrap it up, does Diego Pavia get a shot in the NFL? Maybe. Pavia is going to be 25 at the time of the draft. I don't think he's a top 100 pick. I do think a team will select him late because they like his moxie and toughness. I guess that my guess is he'll be selected in round 6 or 7. Have a similar situation to Riley Leonard, quarterback out of Notre Dame. Last year, drafted, I believe, in the 6th round by the Colts. Thrust into a backup role this week with Anthony Richardson heading to IR. And he's one play away from starting a game for Indianapolis, as he's now behind Daniel Jones. Can Pavia win a game or two as an NFL starter? Possibly. Do I think he's a long-term top-end starting NFL quarterback? Absolutely not. All right, that does it for this show this week. Good show coming up next week. Also, go to draftcountdown.com. 3-round mock draft I put up myself this morning. Head over there, check that out if you haven't already. And yes, despite my ranting and raving about LaNorris Sellers, I still had him as the number 1 pick in the draft. I just think the ceiling on him is much higher than some of the other guys that are currently getting mocked in the top 10 of the draft. But head on over to draftcountdown.com. Check that out. We got a good show next week. Then we're going to take a week off from our regular show. We are going to have a show come out on Thursday the 30th. And I'll talk more about that next week, what we got coming up and everything. But so yeah, everybody have a good rest of your week and enjoy the games this weekend.